New York, out of nowhere, through the open back door of the police van, came a rhinestone-studded high heel. A single, sharp, glittering pump soared through the humid June night and struck with purpose. The drag queen rocking the pump kicked an officer in the shoulder. He tumbled, the momentum sending him skidding across the rough pavement. The crowd outside the Stonewall Inn roared, a feral, visceral noise. As the stunned officer rose and launched himself into the back of the van, the metal door slammed shut behind him. Then came the sounds, raw, terrible, unforgettable. Bone against metal, flesh against metal, and a sound that seemed to seep into the bones of every witness, a dreary, dreary liquid sound that shocked everybody. I mean, shocked us, Martin Boyce would later say. Boyce, a regular at Stonewall, had seen his share of harassment. But this night, this moment, was different. The spark had ignited. June 28, 1969, would not go quietly. The police raid wasn't new. The queer patrons of the Stonewall Inn, gay men, lesbians, trans people, drag queens, street kids, hustlers, had weathered raids before. It was a dance they knew all too well. But that early morning, with the heat clinging to their skin and the tension thick in the air, something snapped. They fought back. And not just in fear or anger, in sheer defiance. Fists flew. Bottles shattered. Bricks were hurled. And suddenly the streets of Greenwich Village weren't silent witnesses to injustice. They were alive with rebellion. Stonewall became a battleground, not of war, but of identity. The riot was the result of years of persecution boiling over in the space of minutes. For the first time, many refused to run. They stood, shoulder to shoulder, loud and unrelenting. The police, caught off guard, retreated. Some barricaded themselves inside the bar. Others scattered. But the crowd kept growing. The people of the night, long invisible, had finally become impossible to ignore. Miss Major Griffin Gracie was there. A black transgender woman who had spent her life surviving brutality and marginalization. She was arrested during the raid. She would later recall the horror of the night, the screams, the blood, the fire in people's eyes. That moment changed her forever. And she carried it with her, through decades of activism, incarceration, homelessness, and unrelenting courage. Now living in Little Rock, Arkansas, Miss Major still speaks the truth of that night. She has said again and again, trans people were there. Trans people fought. Trans people bled. But history, when written by those in power, often forgets the inconvenient truths. In 2016, President Barack Obama designated the area around the Stonewall Inn, including the bar, Christopher Park, and nearby streets, a national monument. It was a gesture not just of remembrance, but of recognition. Recognition that what happened there mattered, and that everyone who took part deserved to be remembered. And for a moment, it felt like a victory. Like a country finally acknowledging the queer people, all queer people, who had stood their ground. Then came erasure. In 2024, during Donald Trump's campaign to reassert a binary definition of gender, the National Park Service removed references to transgender people from the Stonewall National Monument's website. Trans contributions, once finally visible, were scrubbed away with cold precision. Mark Segal, a gay rights activist who had been inside Stonewall that night, couldn't believe it. "I am a witness to history," he said. "And my trans brothers and sisters were with me." Segal was only 18, a fresh transplant from Philadelphia, seeking freedom and community in New York. Stonewall had become his sanctuary, a place where he finally felt less alone. That night, he was near the dance floor when police stormed in. He remembers the panic, the chaos, but also the strength, the refusal to submit. He remembers the drag queens who taunted the police. The trans women who threw themselves between their friends and batons. The street kids who had nothing to lose and everything to gain. He remembers the rage in the air, and the clarity that came with it. Stonewall didn't just happen. It wasn't just a bar. It was a line in the sand. A declaration of humanity. A rising. And now, decades later, the same forces that tried to silence those voices then are trying again. But Miss Major refuses to be erased. "Our blood is on those streets," she says. "You can't rewrite that with a website update. History isn't supposed to be comfortable. It's supposed to be true. And the truth is, transgender people, black, brown, poor, streetwise, fearless, were the vanguard of Stonewall. They fought not because they wanted to be heroes, but because they had no other choice." The queer community was a mosaic of pain and power. Lesbians formed human chains. Drag queens danced in the face of danger. Gay men and trans women linked arms and held the line. And yes, some were arrested. Some were beaten. But they all resisted. They lit fires in trash cans. They pulled up parking meters and used them as battering rams. They broke windows and shouted at the police, "We're not going." And they didn't go. The riots lasted 6 days. 6 days of struggle, unity, resistance. Each night, people returned. Sometimes more. Sometimes fewer. But always with purpose. Out of those nights came more than broken glass. Out of them came pride. Organizations sprang up in the aftermath: the Gay Liberation Front, Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, STAR, and more. Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, both trans women of color, became legendary for their activism, grounded in their Stonewall experience. And yet, today, the government's official narrative dares to omit them. But Segal won't have it. Miss Major won't have it. And neither will the countless others who have inherited that legacy. Erasure is not just disrespect. It's a warning. A reminder that rights, visibility, and dignity can vanish if not fiercely protected. That's why Stonewall still matters. Not as a bar, but as a battleground of memory. A place where those who were told they were nothing declared themselves everything. And no website edit, no policy shift, no administration can undo that night. Not while survivors still speak. Not while communities still march. Not while people still remember the sound of heels against pavement and fists against walls. Stonewall lives in every pride parade, every protest, every shout of resistance. It lives in the bodies of trans people who dare to exist in public. It lives in the eyes of queer youth who find courage in their history. It lives in Miss Major. In Mark Segal. In Martin Boyce. And it will not be erased.